A Bible, go to 1 Peter chapter 4. 1 Peter 4. All right. I don't mean to brag, but I have my very own inflatable narwhal. I know, right? And I'm flexing in front of you on this one here, but and it hasn't been opened yet. It still has that new narwhal smell to it. It's going to be great. The way this came about, me getting this, because I know you're wondering, is I have fallen in love with floating the Clearwater River. I'll tell you why I fell in love with it, but I fell in love with floating, just going up north of Orfino or east of Orfino and floating down to Orfino. It's just a good time. And we decided this year, my sister, she lives in Nampa, and like, hey, she's coming up for 4th of July weekend. It's like, let's just do a big Pernsteiner family float. And I'd purchased, because it amused me, a giant inflatable unicorn. And I suggested that my brother-in-law, Quinn, who is somewhere in the neighborhood of 6'5", 300 plus pounds, that he be the one floating on the unicorn. Because I think how incredible would it be for somebody to just be driving up the highway and look over and see a 6'5" man on a pink unicorn. It's going to be fantastic. So we're putting this out, and I'm letting the family know. We got this family chat going, and John, because he thinks he's clever, says, I will only go if there's a narwhal. You can get anything on the internet. This is you, John. You're going to float the Clearwater on a narwhal. And yeah, and the dignity that will come from that there. But what we're going to be doing here, 1 Peter chapter 4, he's going to be describing for us a kind of community, a kind of society. The narwhal will relate later. I want you to know that I didn't purposely cause you to envision John on a narwhal there without cause here. But Peter's going to describe for us this community of people that as followers of Christ that we should be. The kind of community that actually is pretty natural for us to be if the gospel kind of works its way in our heart the way it's supposed to. I've got you in 1 Peter 4. If you're not there, don't worry. I'm going to read it out loud. You'll be able to keep up. But 1 Peter chapter 4, I want to start in verse 8. It says, above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. Show hospitality to one another without grumbling. As each has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. Whoever speaks as one who speaks the oracles of God. Whoever serves as one who serves by the strength that God supplies, in order that in everything God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen. As Peter's describing this kind of community, this way of living, that to me is, the longer I think about it, the better it sounds. It just begins with, he says, above all, I want you to love. Above all, I want you to love, which above indicates a higher position. When I was hearing this in the voice of Grover. Did you guys grow up with Sesame Street? Right? Near, far. Like there, see, like, and you got above and below. But love of the two of those is up here. It's the above one. See, there are other responses that we can have to life. There's other responses. There's other ways that we could go about living our life. And some of them may be very lovely responses and patterns of living, but none of them are above love. The greatest thing that we will ever do in our lives, Jesus tells us, the two greatest things is to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, and mind, and the second is like it, to love our neighbor as ourselves. The Christian message at its core is one of love. It's the preeminent way to live. And every other response is in some fashion below that of love. In fact, when there's this, one of the other apostles, Paul, he was talking about love in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and as he was laying out what love was like, and how important love was, he went on to say, he said, if I can speak with the tongue of men and angels, but I have not love, I am was it a tinkling glass, a clanging cymbal, is his words that he uses there. If I have not love, all I am is a clanging cymbal. You want to know what the worst possible gift that you could give your friend? Is to give your friend, give some cymbals to your friend's 3-year-old. Like that is like, do you guys do it when your kids are that age or were that age, like Christmas time, birthday time, and they're open up presents and you see what somebody else bought them? Do you ever just look at your friend or your family member like really? This? Did I hurt you? Like why would you do this to me? What my kids didn't know, I used to do this. I told them when they got older, is before anything was allowed out of the package, I mean, they could open it. I would take the present aside and I would remove the batteries from it because it's just like, no, kids, honestly, my theory was that they liked it better without the noise because they could keep it. That was why. Yeah. But I mean, you imagine a 3-year-old with a cymbal, or imagine this, if you will. These guys got together, these people got together, and they thought to themselves, what musical instrument makes a beautiful, beautiful sound? And of course, obviously, we all universally agree that the most beautiful instrument in the world is the recorder. Like, oh, the melodies that those produce. And then this same group of people is like, we've identified the most beautiful sounding instrument on the planet. You know what would make this even better is if we gave them to first graders. This is going to be great. This is going to be great. But not just one, like we'll give it to all of them. And we give them first. I really would have liked to have been on that planning session. Like, I think we could go with any other instrument besides the recorder. Tubas, give them tubas. Like first graders love a good tuba. They would. But no, they went with recorders. And then I don't know how your guys' kids' teachers did this, but our kids' first grade teacher would send the recorder home with them on the Friday at the beginning of spring break. And I just look at her, it's like I probably shouldn't portray her so negatively. She's a very nice person, despite what that decision looks like. She's a wonderful person, but there's a lot of, I just look at like, really, Mrs. R, really? Again, you're going to send them home with a spring break recorder. Paul says that's what an eloquent person sounds like when they don't have love. That's not what an idiot sounds like. That's what somebody who can speak as though they were an angel, that's what they sound like when they speak without love. We live in a society today that everybody's got lots of opinions. I don't know if there's nothing new under the sun. I'm sure that's always been the case. We just happen to have a platform for everybody to share those opinions. I did like it a little better before we knew what everybody thought about everything. I did enjoy that world a little bit better, but everybody's got these really eloquent rants that they want to go on, and these eloquent, like this knowledge that they're just going to drop on society, and all these clever things that they've got to say. And some of them say good things, I guess. Some of them say profound things. But you can always tell the difference between the people who speak with love in their heart and the people who have no love in their heart. The people who are speaking because they want to bless the people around them, and the people who are speaking because they want people to be impressed with how smart they are, or oftentimes they want the idiots to know how stupid they are, right? Paul says if you're one of those people who speaks to let the idiots know where they stand, or for people to validate you, or you just throwing around knowledge because, I don't know, you feel like you need to. If you speak, but you do that, but you have no love in your heart, you are the equivalent of a first grader with a recorder for all of spring break. That's what you sound like. And then Paul goes on, and when he's talking about love, like listen to this kind of world that he's wanting us he's inviting us to live in and to embody. He says things like love is patient, love is kind. It doesn't envy, it doesn't boast. Love's not proud. Love does not dishonor others. It's not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. Keeps no record of wrongs. It does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Then this is my favorite part of that section is verse 7. It says, love bears all things, it believes all things, it hopes all things, it endures all things. Love never fails. Doesn't this sound like the kind of world you'd love to live in? Like this is a defining characteristic of the homes that we live in, or the jobs that we work at, the schools that we attend, the church we're part of, the community that we exist in. That in these communities, it's a place of kindness. People they have kind things to say to one another. They're encouraging. They're uplifting. It's the kind of place where people believe the best about one another. When they don't have all the information, they don't assume terrible things about the other person, but rather they assume that if they did have all the information, they would see that person in a favorable light. So in light of that, they're just going to go ahead and see that person in a favorable light without all the information. It's a place where people hope all things. They look forward to what's coming next, and they endure all things, because sometimes that's what it takes to love people, is endurance. But love does that. It endures. And Peter goes on and says, above all, I want you to love one another. And his reason he gives, at least in this instance, is because love covers a multitude of sins. Love covers a multitude of sins. It's an interesting thing that love does. Because when you contrast that with the society that we exist in here, the society we exist in now is a society that doesn't cover much of anything. If there's anything about you that you have done or thought or look like or whatever that this group over here doesn't care for, it gets amplified and you get rejected because of it. Right? Like we can't even exist in a society now. People can't even think differently anymore. We reject people not because they were rude to us, not because they took something from us, not because we're jerks or selfish or toxic, or we're not rejecting people for those reasons. We're rejecting them because they have the audacity to think a different thought than we think. Can you imagine what a horrible world that would be, that people thought differently than you do? Never mind the fact that what you think right now isn't what you thought 10 years ago, and what you think right now isn't what you're going to think 10 years from now. Like, forget that thing there. But just, can you imagine a world where people just think differently than you? Isn't that awful? We got to reject all those people. Clearly, we need to get rid of them. They think different than you. Like, our society can't even handle that. But what Peter says, I don't want you to just love people who think differently than you do. I want you to love people who have sinned. I want to love people who have handled things poorly. I want you, because love covers a multitude of sins. One of the things that happens with what is a natural thing that takes place, but it's an unhelpful thing that takes place, is that we spend too much of our time evaluating the performance of the people around us, and that people have to live a certain way in order for us to accept them. So, which is an interesting thing when you talk about the gospel, because you know what the gospel says? The gospel says when you didn't perform, it didn't matter. You were loved. And that when God looks at us, God is not looking at us and sizing up. Are we measuring up? Are we doing what he wants us to do? Are we performing? You know the only performance that God is concerned about when it relates to you or I? It's the performance of Jesus Christ. Like that's the performance that God is focused on. With us, he just loves us. And his love covers the multitudes of our sin. And the way that sin was covered was through the perfect performance of Jesus Christ. But like he covers us, and he's like, I love you. Yeah, you screwed that up. Yeah, whatever. Okay, fine. Let's deal with it, move on. Let's deal with it and move on. Because I love you. We're too hung up on our differences. We can just love. And then verse 9, he's like, they'll just love one another. Show hospitality to one another without grumbling. That's the way it says it. The word hospitality, I thought this was interesting. Maybe it isn't, but I think it is. It's a oh my word, compound word. There you go. Thank you. Grover didn't cover compound words in Sesame Street, so I couldn't get. But it's a compound word. It basically, it's two words. It's the word love and the stranger. When it's talking about being hospitable, it's like, I want you to love the stranger. I want you to love the people who don't look like you. I want you to love the people who don't think like you do. I want you to love the people who don't believe like you do or live the way that you do. I want you to love the stranger. I recently, me and a couple friends of mine, we formed this group. We did some training this winter, like winter, early spring. We went through this 4-week training session on it. And then this week, we officially launched the group. But it's a group we're just focused on racial reconciliation. If you've been listening to the world, everybody's screaming about race right now and screaming. And just, they sound like a room full of 6-year-olds with a recorder because there's not love that's being shared. It's just acidity, toxicity that's being flung around, and everybody's thinking they're as smart as the next person or more smarter than the next person, but no love in the things that they're saying. And I'm just looking at this like, hey, we've got a problem. Race is a thing. Racism's a real thing in our world today. And I'm not real impressed with all the shouting that I'm hearing over here, but I've got this gospel and I've got this God that when I was a stranger, he came and got me, right? Like he wanted me. And if he's going to do that for me, I wonder if maybe I could do that for others. And so we formed this group, and we just had our very first meeting this week, and there was, I don't know, 8 to 10 of us there. I forget the exact number of the people who were there, either the people who were sitting at the table or these people have children of different races. We had 5 different races represented there in that table. And the interesting thing is, if you listen to these people talk, and I'm not sure what all I'm at liberty to say, so what was shared in private and what they'd be comfortable with me sharing in sermons. So I just won't share anything that was said other than to say, when you listen to people of color talk about what it was like to live in Lewiston and Clarkston, I promise you, I won't relate it to your experience. It was completely different than my experience growing up here. Completely different than my experience. And as they talk about, this is what it was like to be Nimipu here. This is what it was like to be black here. This is what it was like to be, and this story, of my understanding, is probably repeated across the nation. See, because again, we go back to people have a hard time with differences. And what Peter's here telling us is like, yeah, but if you're a follower of Christ and you see somebody that looks different than you know what you do? You love them. You see somebody that thinks differently than you know what you do? You love them. See somebody that believes different, that embraces a different world view, a set of values than you do. You love them. You love them, love them, love them. Have you guys ever watched the movie? I'm told it's a book too, but I don't like to read books because they wreck movies. John Grisham's A Time to Kill. There's a scene in that movie that actually kind of influenced a little bit of how we formed this group that we've got going here. We do every other month. So on odd number months, what we do is we come and we try to expand our understanding of what the current reality is with race. This is going to sound really boring to you, but it was a fascinating subject. Our conversation this month was on how real estate law and 20th century economic practices interacted with race in America. It was really fascinating. I'll share it all with you if you want, but not here in this sermon here. But then every other month, the even number months, we're just going to go to a restaurant and we're going to eat tacos and cheese dip. Yeah. At Paraiso. Yeah, that's where we're going in June. If you haven't been to Paraiso yet and gotten the cheese dip, go there and thank me later. It'll change your life. It's that good. Like, you'll walk in sad, you'll have one drop of cheese dip, and you're like, I can do this. I can face my life now. Like, it has that effect on you. But we're going to go to Paraiso. We're gonna get together and we're gonna barbecue out in the park and just have a good time getting to know one another and just enjoy each other's company. Where that was influenced for me was John Grisham's A Time to Kill. And you remember there's the story of A Time to Kill. It's a black defendant with this white defense attorney, and he's trying to get him off of these, anyway, I'll spare the whole story. But there comes a point where the white defense attorney, his name was Jake Brigance, and then the black defendant, Carl Lee Haley, they're talking, and Jake Brigance says, Carl Lee, I'm your friend. Carl Lee says, we ain't no friends, Jake. We are on different sides of the line. I ain't never seen you in my part of town. I bet you don't even know where I live. Our daughters, Jake, they ain't never gonna play together. We ain't friends. And then this final scene of the movie. I don't want to wreck it for you, but the final scene of the movie, I mean, it came out in 1994, so I know, spoiler alert, but the final scene of the movie is Jake Brigance showing up at Carl Lee Haley's house, and Jake brings his wife, and she's holding the casserole, and Jake brings his little girl, like 8, 9 years old, whatever it was, and Carl Lee looks at him, and Jake just says to Carl Lee, he says, I thought maybe our daughters could play together. That's what Peter's talking about here. I thought maybe our daughters could play together. I thought maybe we could get together and eat some tacos together, throw a football around together, go fishing together, go swimming together. You get your own narwhal. No, I tell you what, you can borrow my narwhal. I've got a unicorn, and we'll float the river together. We're going to look so cool floating down that river there. But that's we're going to do this together. See, for the Christian, this is we're hospitable people. There's a book, I haven't read it, just heard the title. It might be a stupid book, but the title I thought was pretty cool. It's about hospitality. The title is The Gospel Comes with a House Key. That's a clever way of putting it. The gospel comes with a house key. You want to live out the Christian life? Here's how you live it out. Have some people over your house for tacos some night. That's how you live out the Christian life. Go play kickball with somebody. Go swimming with them. Invite some friends out to grab some Fazzaris. Not the Shotzi, because it's un-American to put mustard sauce on a pizza. Yeah. Jesus didn't put mustard sauce on his pizza. He didn't. That's the truth. You can't prove me wrong there. Right. But no, I mean, a lot of times when people think of church and ministry, they think of things that take place at this building, something the organization is going to put on. And, and sometimes that's the case, and sometimes that's helpful. But the greater ministry, the greater expression of Christianity is not something that we would put on here. It would be something that would be hosted at your home. It would be something that would take place in a park. And if you look it up, you could read the story of Jesus, read the Gospels, when it kind of gives the narrative of his life, the biography of his time here. Jesus was, in almost every story, he was either on his way to, at, or returning from a meal. If he was here today, he's calling us up saying, hey, I've been working on this carne asada recipe. You got to get over here. I'm like, yeah. You had me at carne asada. He would be doing things like that. And then goes on and says, as each has received a gift, verse 10, use it to serve one another. As each has served a gift, use it to serve one another. One of the things that I like about the Christian life when it's properly oriented is that we don't have to become a lot of things that we aren't. If anything, we're allowed to just be who we are. He doesn't want us to turn into something other than ourselves. Like, I made you a certain way. I've given you certain giftings. I've created you with a certain temperament and a certain personality. And I created you that way because I like that. And we could use that. And who you are could be a blessing to other people. If you were to go through the New Testament, there's these different things. They call them spiritual gifts. There's a different list in 1 Corinthians 12 and Romans 12 and a few other places there. They kind of go through, and here's some spiritual gifts that are there. Peter highlights two of them there, the gift of, the gift of teaching and the gift of service that are there. I kind of went through that list, and I was going through that list thinking, kind of nice. I guess I started thinking, I like it when these kinds of people are around. I really do. Last week, you remember when we honored Carrie for that? I like having the Carrie Wickses of the world around because things happen when she's around, and she just gets things done. And I sincerely, guys, I did not purposely forget to leave the check out so that I could hand her 2 envelopes as a joke. I didn't, that was legitimately because Carrie Wicks wasn't a part of that. Normally what would happen is she would just hand me the envelopes, singular. And but that's just but that's the way I live my life, but that's not how Carrie lives her life. Carrie just gets things done. She has just this great gift of administration there. Start going through some of the other gifts that are there. One of the gifts that is listed is the gift of discernment. I was thinking about this one. This is the ability to recognize whether or not something is truly good. Oftentimes, people with the gift of discernment have the ability to see where things are headed. I like that. I like being around people that know where things are headed. And part of it is that, the experience of age will help you with that some, but there's some people that just have it a little bit better than the rest of us and their ability to anticipate where this is going. See, we've got enough people in our world that their mantra of their life is mistakes were made, or, well, that didn't work, or hold my beer and watch this. We've got enough people in our world who, I meant well at the time, it sounded like a good idea at the time. We've got enough people who live by that. What we really benefit from, what we need is people that can assess the situation and they can see if we go that way, here's where this is going to take us. But if we go this way, here's where this is going to take us. Some people are just good at that. The gift of encouragement. This is that the compound word here, which it's to call to one side. That's one word, and then to strengthen or to console. Like, in other words, like, I'm going to sit next to you so that I can strengthen you. There are just some people that just, like, when they show up, somehow everybody in the room feels better. Right? Not everybody has that effect on people, but there's some people. My Uncle Lee, right? Like, so my dad's sister moved to Vermont, years ago, married a guy from Vermont, Lee. And they got this family. It's just a super neat family, but I hardly ever see them because they live in Vermont. But every now and again, like every 6, 7, 8 years or so, they'll make a trek back out here west. And I look forward to seeing all of them. All of them. I like each one of them. They're really neat. What I like about Lee is that guy is an encourager. Like, when I hadn't seen Lee in, I think it'd been like 8 years or so since I'd seen him last. He's in my parents' kitchen, and I walk in, and this literally the first thing he does when he sees me, he looks at me. Wowee, it's you. That is exactly how he greeted me. And every time that I was around him from that point on, whether he used those words or not, I felt that. Like, Lee is happy to see me. There's a lot of people that when I've walked in the room have said, it's you. Totally different tone of voice than Lee. But I mean, he just has that ability that, like, there's just something, like, when you walk away from him, you're like, I can do this. Yeah, okay. All right, I'm going to be all right. You know what? I'm not a terrible guy after all. Lee just told me so. Yeah, there's just some guys that have that gift. The gift of faith, another one that's listed. These are the people that can believe despite all the evidence. There's a song, one of my all-time favorite songs. It's Lean on Me. I always get that and Stand By Me mixed up. But Lean on Me. And there's a line in there. And it says, please swallow your pride. If I have faith, you need to borrow. Now, my wife, when she was going, she looked at my notes and yesterday, and she made a little note. She's like, Jeff, that's not how the words go. She's like, I kept in my notes, if it matters. It says, please swallow your pride if I have things you need to borrow. And I've been singing this song my whole life. And it's never been things. It's always been pride. Or faith. It's always been faith. If I have faith, you need to borrow. So I Googled it. It's like, she's going to be wrong. And here's the thing. Like, not only was she wrong, but so was Bill Withers, the guy that wrote it. He doesn't even know the lyrics to his own song. Because it's clearly, if I have faith, you need to borrow. I love that line, though. I didn't make it up. He just got it. I mean, I know he wrote it before I was born, but he could have consulted with me. But And they're like, that's my kind of the snapshot of our marriage on display right there, if you're paying attention. But um, well, whether Bill Withers got it right or not, the sentiment, please swallow your pride. If I have faith, you need to borrow. I don't know if you've ever been in those situations with somebody before. I have, where you will you struggle to find your way to faith. It's too hard. It's too confusing. It's too overwhelming. It's too scary. It's too whatever. And you want to believe, but you just don't know how. And then you'll talk to that somebody. And I've had friends say to me, like, hey, I know you can't believe right now, but you know what? I can believe enough for the both of us. You're going to get through this. God's going to see you through. You're going to be okay. And I like somehow, there's something about a borrowed faith that I like. Something about that's how the community of Christ is supposed to function, is that because none of us are always able to believe. None of us are always able to think that, yeah, we'll get through this. Yeah, this is going to turn out okay in the end. None of us always are. And sometimes it's nice to have somebody sit next to you that says, I'll believe enough for the both of us. Someday you'll get back to faith, but until then, I'm going to believe on your behalf. Other people have the gift of mercy. They're the ones that can help the afflicted seeking aid, or the Bible dictionary that I looked at defined it as they're the ones that bring help to the wretched. There's a word we don't use often anymore, but they bring help to the wretched. When I was talking with Kim about this, she's like, I feel like these people keep the leaders from turning the church into this well-oiled corporation, because they keep dragging strays into the mix and remind us that the church is among the things that she's supposed to be. She's also supposed to be a hospital. She's also supposed to be a place for people who are hurting and struggling and afraid and alone and defenseless, where they can come and get the help that they need. Some of you have that ability. Some of you just see it. Like you're like that guy from, it was the kid on Sixth Sense, I see dead people. It's like, I see hurting people. That's your thing. You can just see them. And we need you. We need you to see that, because if we don't, not everybody sees it. Other people have the gift of giving. It's the one that's mentioned. I was reminded of this guy back in Minnesota when we lived there. He was a car dealer. He had this used car dealer shop that it wasn't big. It was, wasn't like one of these big, car dealerships you see on 21st Street or anything. He didn't have any new cars. He had about 50, maybe 50 cars in his lot at any given moment. They're all old and they're all used. But he was one of the most generous people I knew. He was one of these guys that he would just give cars away to families in need. I don't know how much money this guy ever made. He might not have made much. If anything, he might have just given it all away. But that was what he did. And I watched him give cars to several people. I watched him give a car to us. At the time, I'd just become a pastor of this little Baptist church in northern Minnesota. With a family of 4. We were living on $1,200 a month. You can imagine what kind of car we could afford at $1,200 a month with a family of 4. It wasn't much. And Neil, this guy's name, he found out about us and said, I got a car for you. He's like, well, I'm not sure we can afford it, Neil. It's like, I'm pretty sure you can afford this. It's free. And he drove it to us. He drove it. He's like, here, just sign the title right over. He's like, no money, nothing. I just gave it to us. And really, he didn't just do that with us, though. I come to find out he did that with a bunch of people. Because that's just the way he lived his life. There was just something about him that was generous. Like he used his car dealership to bless people. Some other folks there that, they just have this remarkable gift at making money. And then they love to use that to bless other people, to fund organizations in our town or community or our world that are doing some really remarkable things. And some people are just blessed with the gift of being able to do that. We need those folks. Anyway, there's a bunch of other spiritual gifts that are listed if you keep going through the list. But like, as I described it, was there a single one of those people that you're like, I don't really like it when they're around? Encouragers, I don't know, I get kind of tired of them. People that have the gift of discernment, now they can be irritating when you want to do something stupid. Yeah, that again, maybe in that instance, it's like you can, Um, but like every single one of those people is like, that's exactly who we want here. If we went through all the list, every single one of the people that the Bible describes, like, here's the giftings that I give my people, every single one of those we would say, oh, I like that. I like that. I like having those kinds of folks around. And here's the thing, guys, you're those folks. You're those folks exactly how you are right now. We need you. We like you. We benefit from having you be you. We really do. And it's like, so use what you have to bless others. And as each one has received a gift, use it to serve one another. Now, here he talks about spiritual gifts, but I think the concept can go to other gifts as well. I told you there was a story on this. You know how I wound up buying a narwhal, besides John's cleverness? Um, I fell in love with floating the Clearwater because I was talking with my buddy Mitch about something we could do with the teens. And he's like, hey, I got some tubes. We could float the river. And I'm like, that sounds fun. How many tubes do you have? And he's like, I have enough. I don't know how many tubes he has, but I'm pretty sure, I think we had almost 20 people there. And he had tubes for all of us, including a couple of extras for us to stick our stuff in as it could float down the river. Right? And he had this whole system where it's all like tied together. And anyway, it was, opinions on proper ways to patch a tube that's been popped and it all the things you would expect a man with 20,000 tubes to have. And it was like, it was so much fun. We had such a great time floating the river. And we were able to do it because Mitch and Aletha have a gazillion tubes and they gifted it to, well, they kept them, but I mean, they gave us the gift of being able to float with them. So I've been, over the course of time, trying to develop my own arsenal of tubes. But I really want to go this route, the narwhal unicorn route, because I think it's funny. That's, and so we're going to do a men's float down the river, and you guys are going to love it. You guys are going to love it. Now, you ladies might be a little uncomfortable, like, hey, I don't want my man getting all that attention while he's floating on the river in a pink unicorn. But no, we'll make sure we keep proper boundaries there. But I was recently at another guy's house. You know what his passion in life was? Hot fudge. That's his thing. He's trying to make, or is working on perfecting, like the perfect hot fudge sundae where he home makes his own hot fudge. I'm like, I've never met somebody who does that before. I'm glad you're on planet Earth. It's like, and we've all got our things. We've all got things that we love to do, things that we have at our disposal, an ability that we possess, a passion that we have. And I know it doesn't sound important sometimes. Like who cares if you can make hot fudge or not? Like nobody in the world's ever died because they didn't have hot fudge. I realize there's an element of that, but I can tell you what people have died from is they've died from loneliness. I can tell you what has made society much worse is division and people in that tribe and this tribe and this tribe and this tribe and nobody crossing borders at all. Like that has made our world worse. I can tell you what's made our world is people feeling like they're completely alone as they go through their days. But then somebody comes along with a narwhal and a bucket of hot fudge and says, come float the river with me. We'll eat fudge as we go. And all of a sudden these people are like, hey, I'm not alone, am I? So they're just like scooping the fudge in as they're going down the river. I've got this whole scenario. My next river trip in my mind, I'm creating it as I'm talking to you here. I want fudge now on this next trip. I know I don't look like a guy that eats a lot of fudge, but I do. All of a sudden, there's hope in their life again because somebody used the gift that they had to bless other people. Right? And that's the way the community of Christ is to function. That's the way the body of Christ is. That we love above all, above everything else. Whatever we think or believe, whatever position in life we hold, above all else, we love. Covers a multitude of sins, and we're hospitable. We come along and we love people. We even love people we haven't even met yet. And we use what we have to bless, to serve, to strengthen. whether it's a spiritual gift like the ones that listed, or it's something as goofy as a perfect hot fudge recipe. Right? We bless. And when we do this, we're told in Scripture, it brings glory to our Lord Jesus Christ. That's verse 11. In order that in everything God might be glorified through Jesus Christ. To him belong glory and dominion forever and ever. And they're like, well, how does that bring glory to Christ? That was my question as I was thinking about it. They're like, well, or why? It's like, well, part of why it does is because who doesn't like that guy? Like, how many people is like, Christians, they love me just the way I am. They said nice things to me. They gave me hot fudge. I now have my own inflatable narwhal. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but how many people go through that and I hate those kinds of people being nice to me and loving me and accepting me and stuff. That's part of how it glorifies God. Is it glorifies them. People hey, these are nice people. They're nice people. I don't know many people that don't like nice people. But the other way it glorifies God, and this brings us back to the gospel, isn't this exactly how Jesus lived? He loved, he included, and he served. Right? John 14 talks about this, that Jesus went and he prepared a place for us that we might be with him. Talk about the greatest gift of hospitality ever. He's like, I'm building a place for you. And when it's ready, I'm going to come get you. We're going to live together forever. This is what Jesus Christ did for us. He prepared a place for us. And I don't know what all we're eating in heaven, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if Jesus come on, carne asada. It's Taco Tuesday. We're doing this. There's still, I don't know if time still exists in heaven, but Taco Tuesday does in heaven there. So we're going to sit down on the table. We're going to go fish together. We're going to go swim together. We're going to sit on this bench in this beautiful park together. We're going to, he's preparing a place for us that we would go be where he is, there we may be also. And doesn't it make sense that if that's what our Savior is like, that when we claim to be his followers, that we do the same, right? All right, there you have it, 1 Peter chapter 4. Hopefully you remember something other than narwhals after this one here, but why don't we pray? Father, thanks for the gift of 1 Peter 4, and this reminder to just love each other earnestly. Help us to love the people that are around us that we like, and help us to love the people around us that we don't understand. We've got a lot of division in our world, got a lot of hatred and hostility. You haven't invited us into that. You've invited us to be hospitable to people who are different than us and to love everybody. May that be true of us. And Lord, I pray that the folks that are in here today, that they would just have the sense that they matter, the sense that they're an important part of your kingdom, of your body. And Lord, would you, I don't know, just bless them with that peace and knowing that they matter here, but then in such a way, though, that they're just liberated to stop thinking about whether or not they matter. And they can just bless people around them for your glory, because you've blessed them, because you blessed us. Yeah. Thanks, Lord. We praise your name. Amen.